Imagine a world where the climate crisis is finally given top priority in this world, just like the pandemic did, and everyone is working towards getting us out of it, where the government gives proper support and incentives for people to install solar panels at home. And companies are given tax breaks whenever they are able to generate their own electricity renewably. Local neighborhoods start planting fruit trees for collective consumptions, and the state gives out free seedlings and the know-how to help people grow their own food. Even help set up community gardens and, well, urban farming cooperatives. Cities focus on building public transit with excellent walking and cycling facilities intended to minimize private vehicle needs. Community centers are now developed to build communal ownership over things like baby prams or carpentry tools or even prom dresses for everyone free to borrow and return. Now, these are but a tiny snippets of what some of you may recognize as climate solutions, but these are also useful to reduce individuals' economic burdens, as well as increasing quality of life. But what if I tell you now that this type of society is the exact opposite of what government's goals are when measured by current modern economy? Now, we live in an era that is defined by the global economy that has led us to believe that in order for humanity to thrive, we have to become as rich as possible. A thinking that directly allows endless production through exploitation and extraction of nature and communities. And for what? To build shareholder values. And as crazy as self-defeating as this sounds, this is considered normal by society, encouraged even. Using all sorts of marketing and advertising, we are trained to demand whatever it is that is produced, even if we don't need them. To the point that we are given loans and credits enabling us to buy them, creating this consumerist world that always revolves around how much, but never at what cost. The domination of this current way of thinking is best seen by the global adaptation of a single measure of success, the GDP, or the gross domestic product, which measures the total amount of money created in a year through production or consumption of things, goods and services recorded in a country. Now, this system reinforces the notion that the only way for humanity to thrive is for us to modernize, and to be developed, so that we can be consumers of more and more goods through endless creation of wealth and money. It also holds that if GDP does not grow, society must panic. But in this blind pursuit of wealth, it gives zero regards to, well, first of all, who it goes to, but also where the money comes from. And it really fails to capture what it is that truly makes society happy. For example, according to GDP, it's a good thing that more and more people are sick over time so that they can pay to get healthy, hence creating economic value. A country where the air is so polluted that everybody needs to pay for its solutions, be it N95 masks, air purifiers, or lung infection medication, is considered great for development. But at a more detrimental level, this way of thinking also destroys previously harmonious ways of living with nature, such as the ones we see in indigenous communities. Now, with the GDP as a goal, these communities who barely need money to live are immediately labeled poor, regardless of how well they are able to provide for themselves. And since they are hindering GDP's progress, they must therefore be developed so that they can be lifted off poverty and become productive members of society who consumes from the market. And often the lands that give lives to these communities are then turned by the government into strategically productive opportunities investments. And these are in the mining, monoculture plantation, manufacturing infrastructures. And then the natives are then given jobs as low-paying, arguably exploitative workers. Now, the irony is that after these investments take place, the ecosystem and therefore their original livelihoods are then destroyed, and now they have no choice but to get a job to buy things to live, making them endless consumers, consistently feeding into this GDP machine that creates dependency to the system. And of course, this creates further justification for more development, and the vicious cycle continues. Now, GDP at its essence rejects harmonious ways of living and actively encourages exploitations of all kinds, which leads us to a systematic destruction of our planet. Like the proverb beautifully summarizes, when the last tree is cut and the last fish caught and the last river poisoned, we will realize that we cannot eat money. And this is precisely what awaits us as the climate crisis gets worse, which has already started to unfold as we see record-breaking of heat waves, drought, floods, cyclones, crop failure, food shortages, disease outbreaks, and so much more that is anyway forcing our current economy to a complete collapse. So now it becomes apparent that if we want to survive for the next decades even, we must dismantle our accepted understanding of what society's goals are. We must really question ourselves. What is the underlying purpose of a country, of government? Is it to provide well-being and livelihood for its people? Is it to ensure that no one is left behind whilst fulfilling their needs? Now, what if that becomes the country's direct goal? What if we have a government and a country that prioritize centered around the fulfillment of people's needs and their freedom? An economy for life. So what does this translate to? This means changing the government's economic goal from one that maximizes the amount of money created to one that actively minimizes the need for money for people to live. This means building infrastructures that directly help communities fulfill their own water, food, electricity needs through small-scale, decentralized, low-cost investments. Regenerative in nature, so that it only requires a one-off investment and it will keep giving after. Owned and managed by the communities with proper knowledge support so they can eventually be self-sufficient and be able to thrive on their own, but also not vulnerable to market volatility or disasters elsewhere. For example, imagine if instead of providing electricity tokens for the poor to continuously pay for, why not just install microhydros or solar panels in the communities? And then give them the knowledge to be able to manage and maintain them so it can continuously provide free electricity. Instead of pushing and giving subsidies to harmful chemical fertilizers, why not set up education centers which teaches the farmers how to make organic compost locally? Instead of providing food vouchers or staple food help, why not grant us land to farm or create community gardens or communal urban farming? Why not plant fruit trees in every public park or teach us permaculture or hydroponics at school? Imagine building food sovereignty at every level, urban and rural, to ensure that no one will ever go hungry. Instead of an entire education solely designed to prepare us for a job market so that we can earn and consume to live, why not also equip us with practical skills to live in a world that doesn't require jobs to survive? Now, I'm not saying that by pursuing an economy for life, businesses will cease to exist or that nobody will have jobs anymore. But in this way of living, nobody will need to pursue a meaningless 9-to-5 jobs just for the sake of paying their bills, which takes away their freedom to really live a meaningful and purposeful life. And with such freedom, we will also see a shift in society's value to one that promotes collaboration and cooperation instead of competition, to one that nurtures as opposed to exploits. Now, this may seem like a far cry from our current economic system, where most governments prioritize businesses and depending on them to give the people peanut-paying wages to live. But the role of the government is not to serve the private shareholders. countries functioning like an extension of the private sector is why people and planet are always sacrificed for profits. And when we are anyway forced to undergo this paradigm shift towards an economy that prioritizes lives and livelihood above money, we will see that a huge range of creative solutions will come out using the resources and technologies we already have. And this translates to not only adaptation and mitigation of the climate crisis, but also becomes the solution to all our social problems, including inequality and exploitation. So, how do we get there? For starters, we can all start building our own economies for life, which anyway we must do in preparation of survival in a warming planet. But we can start in a household setting, at school, in our communities. And the more we build, the more secure our lives become, and the more obsolete the toxic economic system becomes. But of course, not everybody will have the know-hows and the luxury of the resources to do so. And we should help as many people as possible to ensure the collective survival. But to fully transform the global economy as fast as possible, we need a change in the system. And for that, our role as individuals is to speak up and demand it. Be it in the classroom, in your breakfast table, in your dinner parties, or in the streets. Speak up. Discuss this. Talk about this. Make this into the norm. And we will see that the public policy will follow. Because as history has shown, people power works. Thank you for listening.